Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Disrupt Unite. I hope you are enjoying this virtual conference so far. My name is Jason McCallum, and I'm a solutions architect on the Advanced Services team. I wanted to put this presentation together because I see so many customers with zero automation, and I feel like this is one of the best features of iGel. So stick with me to look at UMS automation concepts that can help you deploy, manage, report on your environment with ease. There are 3 UMS tools that we're going to focus on. However, there are many, many more, but I only get 25 minutes, and hopefully that will give me enough time to talk to you about default directory rules, jobs, and views. So default directory rules are rules that move devices in and out of folders based on specific criteria. For example, when a new registered device comes online, do you want it to be placed in the root of the devices folder, where you would have to manually move it to the correct folder? Or would you prefer a set of automation tasks to cause the device to move to the correct folder and become production ready? So on the screen is the technical definition that is listed on our KB article. And I also gave you the URL down at the bottom in case if you want to explore what all we have on the KB about default directory rules. The snippet on the right is of the default directory rules icon, so hopefully you can find it easier. It is listed under the UMS administration section of the UMS console, so go check it out and follow along. Automate devices for production ready state. So what does that mean? That means converted hardware such as laptops or desktops, or even new iGel devices start out of the box can be ready to use with zero touch. And this can even include firmware updates. Let's walk through this example so you can see the benefits. Listed on the slide is the requirements you will need for a zero touch update and a ready for production automation sequence. I'm now going to go to the next slide and show you this with screenshots. So what you're going to need. You're going to need to enable the automatic registration. You're going to need a staging folder and a production folder under the devices section. If you want to add the firmware update to your automation, you will need to have a update profile that just says check for update on boot. You will need the firmware that you want to upgrade to, and just download that and have it available in UMS. And finally, you will need the default directory rules, one for staging if you want to do firmware updates, and one to move devices into production. So now that you have the requirements for a zero-touch update and are ready for production automation sequence, let me dive just a little deeper on the actual default directory rule and what it's made of. So a default directory rule, it's made up of criteria, and that criteria are things that need to be met so that we can perform an action sequence. I've highlighted some of the criteria that can be chosen and reasons I have used them in the past, like firmware versions to perform updates or last known IP for distinguishing a location. This actions portion of the default directory rule are the moving a device to a target folder that has specific objects assigned to that target folder, like the update profile or the firmware. Objects can be configuration profiles, scripts. There's many options. It is also worth mentioning that actions of each default directory rules, in other words, do you want to run this directory rule on boot? Do you want to override the directory membership of a device, move it or not, etc.? So let's look at building a new default directory rule. IGEL has given you the ability to select many types of criteria. Like I mentioned before, we can use firmware version, network name, and many more. That can be used to determine an action. Once you've chosen a criteria, then you'll select a target folder and action. The target folder is where the device will go if the criteria is met, and the actions are apply on device boot, which means apply on boot even if previously registered, override existing directory membership that will move a previously registered device from a directory, or leave in subdirectory. A device will not be moved if there already is a subfolder. If the device is already in a subfolder of the target directory, it won't be moved. For our demo, let's create some rules. One for the update and another rule for moving the device into production. As you can see, for the first rule, I have chosen to go with firmware version for the criteria, the staging folder for the target folder, and I've also chosen to run this rule on device boot. That will take care of the firmware update. My next rule, I will again choose firmware version and specify the firmware I want for production. That is the firmware of the device that I want in production as the standard firmware. And if the criteria is met, let's move that device to the Citrix folder. Okay, so what does this look like in action? And I apologize, I'm not showing this in a live demo fashion, but rather screenshots, and well, here we go. So when the device registers for the first time, our default directory rule kicks in and places the device in the staging folder. In that staging folder, we have requirements to be met for zero touch upgrade. So the device performs the firmware update and it reboots. As you can see on the screen, this is what a firmware update looks like. You get the little amber icon and you can see on the device itself, it's performing an update. When that reboot completes, the next default rule is performed because it was based on the newer firmware. And the actions was to move the device from the staging folder and put it into the production folder. So with the refresh of the console, we can see that the device was moved to the Citrix folder, and the profile configuration is such that, well, Citrix is going to now auto start and it's waiting for the client to log in. But wait, there's more. More options with default directory rules. I only threw this slide in not to confuse things, but to show you that you can layer rules to get even more strict with your actions. In this screenshot, I reused the production ready rule and added more criteria. Does it meet the firmware version? And does it have a specific profile directly assigned? And does it have a structure tag called Citrix? These are not if-then statements, but rather and statements only. But as you can see, I have structure tags called Citrix. I have a directly assigned object called ntp-central, which is in my rule. And so therefore the device moved to the Citrix folder. Okay, as I promised, let's talk about jobs and views. So on this slide is the technical definition that is listed on our KB article for jobs. And I also gave you the URL down at the bottom in case if you want to go explore what we have on jobs. The snippet is the section to the right. Sorry, the snippet is what this section looks like on the right there. The main thing is to note about jobs is that they are automated actions that can be performed on a scheduled task. As you can see, I've listed on the slide all the many things that you can do, but let's look at creating one. So if you create a new job, you'll notice that there's a drop down for command. This again is all the many things that you can do with a job. I'm just going to go ahead and choose reboot for now and click next. Then you can choose how you want to schedule that job. So I want my devices to reboot at 2 a.m. every day. Now you'll be given the option to go ahead and assign the job to a folder. You can skip this and assign it later, but I'm going to go ahead and pick the Citrix folder. And finally, I just wanted to show you, if you click on the rule, you can see in the upper left, it is assigned, and in the bottom section, the execution results. Pretty simple stuff. So let's move on. Okay, so views. I love views. They are the reporting engine of UMS, but the secret part of views is that you can also use them for automation. Again, with the KB definition, the URL for your convenience, and a snippet. So let's create a view that shows all iGel devices. I'm going to name mine all iGel devices. If you notice, like a default directory rule, we have lots of criteria to choose from. For this example, I'm going to choose comment, since by default, the comment field is blank. Then I should get all iGel devices in my report. So I just click next, then next, then next, then finish, taking all the defaults. And this is what I get. I get a view displaying all my endpoint devices. Pretty simple. However, iGel UMS gives you the option to save this report as a CSV or send the results as an email. You could also create an administrative task and schedule this view to be refreshed and emailed to a distribution group on a scheduled task. You can even use this report to assign objects, such as profiles or certificates, based on the results of the view. Wow, that is powerful. One last quick note on views. If you click the button, I have the arrow on there. The button has 3 little dots. You can change what is displayed in the report. Also look for this in your admin tasks when you want to schedule this view and be emailed, because you can change what the report is showing. As you can see, I added path, and now my report, I can see the path of the devices also. So sum this all up, and to help you automate your environment. With default directory rules, you can manage the automatic registration, update, deployment of workflows, all by just plugging the device into a network. Couple that with jobs for running scheduled tasks such as reboot for an entire company, site, or just a single device. Sorry. And then reporting with views to allow to manage projects or assigning objects to specific devices with unique characteristics. Management just got a lot easier. So if you have questions, we can provide answers. Just please join us in the virtual chat of this channel if you have not already done so. Also, please feel free to reach out to your account rep for details on engaging advanced services to help you implement automation in your environment. Thank you and enjoy Disrupt Unite.